This is Dr. Ugo, and we are going to be doing our wellness webinar for tonight. So glad that you guys joined me, whether it be live or on the uh, replay. And just want to actually share with you guys some amazing information that's really blessed my life, blessed my wife's life, my mother's life, and it's how to actually get your health back. That's my tagline whenever you see any of my content on social media. How do we get our health back? And so just want to be able to share with you guys a little bit of information about particular health topics, but also a system that's really blessed us to be get our health back, to really show us the way. In a lot of ways, I mean, for me and my wife, we're both medical professionals, and we thought we knew what it took to get our health together. And so, big part of that, what I like to do with these webinars is to just give our testimony up front, just to let you guys know, that there's hope out there. That even with medical professionals who may be even struggling with their health, that there is something out there that can actually get our health back together. There's a way of actually attacking our health issues. A lot of them are related to a couple of different issues, and we're going to be talking about those tonight. But our focus tonight is actually going to be something that I think a lot of people in America are dealing with. We'll actually talk about the statistics there, and that's going to be weight loss. How do we actually win in that particular area? How do we not just get some traction there, but how do we actually lose the weight, keep it off, and actually understand why we actually get it on so that, again, we're not just kind of chasing numbers. We're not going after a fad diet, but we're actually truly, again, getting your health back, maintaining it, holding on to it. I think that's our God-given right to be able to do that. And so just want to be able to share what we've learned. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and jump in again with these testimonies for me and my wife, starting with her, because actually, like you say, our journey started with her before it started with me. And so with my wife, my beautiful wife, Angelita, she was getting to a point, I can honestly say we were, but we were struggling with our health once we got into our 40s. They say once you get to 40, everything goes downhill. We thought that was just a saying in our 30s, and then we experienced it in our 40s, especially, honestly, the first part of our 40s. And so for her, she kind of started, some of her struggles started in her 30s, and in terms of, she was having some issues with, anxiety and depression. So she was on a antidepressant already heading into her 40s. But some of these other ones that we have listed here in terms of, what was happening before, she actually started on the system, started on a journey to be able to truly get her health back, having some pain, something that she'd especially when she was working out. That was something that she was doing about 5 to 6 times a week, at least for an hour. So, I mean, she was every single day, just about during the week, still dealing with visceral fat. So that's a fat that, yeah, actually, sometimes you don't even see, but it's choking the organs in your abdomen. It's actually even releasing a lot of inflammatory markers. So she knew it was there. She's a nurse practitioner. She had the numbers. She could see that, her cholesterol levels weren't where they're supposed to be. But despite, exercising and eating like a rabbit, just wasn't being able to get that weight off, get that belly fat to go away. Again, high cholesterol, anxiety, depression, I mentioned before. And then IBS, that's irritable bowel syndrome, for those that don't know. And so with that, she had reflux that had really gotten me bad. It got to the point where she was having about 5 to 6 meds that she was taking on a daily basis, and it still wasn't getting that thing under control. Also with the IBS, she also had developed lactose intolerance probably earlier on in her 40s. This kind of kept getting worse. And as I like to say with my wife, she's not someone who just yeah, it's all, she likes dairy, she loves dairy. So she'll eat cheese just for the sake of eating cheese. Okay, not like on stuff like, no, I'm just going to eat the cheese. That's how much I love it. And she had to really scaled back to the point where she just had to let it go. Started trying to find, non-dairy alternatives. Just wasn't the same, but what can you do when your body's not, treating you the way they used to do when you were younger? And so then she started dealing with, a little bit of what we have, called menopause. So started having the hot flashes, started having some of the mood swings, difficulty building muscle. Again, all this work that she's putting into the gym, she really didn't feel like she has too much to show for it. Not only is that fat not going away, but again, not even really getting too much gains from whatever resistance training that she's doing. When they get that definition, that summertime fine body, whatever the case is, and this really wasn't happening no matter how much work she put in. And again, with that, her weight was just kind of fluctuating. And so, probably had something to do with the perimenopause as well. So just a lot of things going on that, she just wasn't, and it seemed like it was getting worse and worse and worse as the days, months, years But everything changed when we actually got introduced, I should say specifically her, introduced with a system that really helped her to get her health back by one of our good friends now, Dr. Natasha. And so she had just gotten on it not too long before. She shared with us, and the results were just amazing for her. So now what has changed, her body fat again, just being able to get rid of that belly fat that had been so stubborn for her without having to work out nearly as hard as she used to. You see there, body fat decreased from 32% down to 25. Being able to build muscle without excessive exercising. So now she works out maybe about 3 to 4 times a week, maybe for about 30 to 45 minutes. Again, parallel that to 5 to 6 times a week for over for at least an hour, typically hour, an hour and a half. The results that you can see on the screen right there. So no, that's not AI. These are just photos that we have here of what happened after the system. Joint pain melted away. So a lot of that inflammation is one of the big things that is plaguing so many different people. Myself, I'll talk about that in a second. The anxiety and depression, she was actually able to get off of the antidepressant that she was on for over 10 years because of what the system was able to do for her, mainly in actually being able to heal her gut because there's so much of a big connection between what's going on with the gut and what's going on with the mind. There's also, again, her being able to get that acid reflux taken care of. 5 to 6 meds she was taking, gone. Being able to get back to dairy, right there. So just an amazing testimony for her there, getting restful sleep, those hot flashes, mood swings decreasing significantly, that stable weight now for over a year now that she's been on the system. And again, those dietary restrictions, she was honestly eating like a rabbit, just being able to kind of eat more of what she actually likes, but understanding how that food works when it comes to her health. And so at least just a lot more freedom in terms of how she's living her life. So I'm observing this, from the background, sidelines. I don't need to put me in, coach. So about 3 months later, I actually started the same system myself. And again, early 40s. So noticing some changes myself, again, not in the direction that I want to go, starting to get more brain fog at work. So I'm a clinical pharmacist, so I need my wits about me. And, I guess I was able to, perform well enough, but I just could tell that, okay, I'm not as sharp as I was back in my 20s when I was in pharmacy school, picking up all this information. It's just not there, and I didn't really know what was going on. Some GI issues myself, like gas and bloating, taking some supplements to try to help with that. When I initially started those, they helped a little bit, but they didn't resolve anything. So I'm having to keep taking them, and they're just not getting the job done in terms of what I was hoping to get in terms of the benefit. Then we also have the stubborn belly fat that I was having as well. Maybe not to the point where my belly was protruding. I'm working out too about 4 times a week and things like that. But who doesn't want to be able to, just like look like they did when they were in their, teenage years, early 20s and things like that before things for most of us start going a little sideways when it comes to our weight. And with that, increasing joy was something that I didn't really get until my early 40s on strong and hard. I'd say probably before I actually decided to jump into this, really wondering like, okay, my mid 40s, my late 40s, am I really going to be able to get into the gym and be able to do what I'm doing with fairly light weights? Just the pain that was just coming on was just kind of like, this is going to be somewhat debilitating in terms of being able to work out. I felt in that moment. And so that was just what was going on. I didn't know what else to expect when I saw, my wife just getting some benefits. I was like, seems like she's getting all kinds of benefits. I don't know what I want. I don't even know what I need, but let's go ahead and get started. And it didn't take long, probably on day one, day two of the system, that mental clarity came right back. One of the two, there's we're gonna talk about the system, but one of the parts of the system just really gives good mental sharpness, really gives you good energy. And so on the job, just like immediately it's like, okay, light bulbs going back off again. Gears are turning like they used to turn. Gut health restored. So the supplements that I was taking, don't need to take them anymore. And actually, I'm feeling better than I was before I even started taking. So you can see with the fat loss, the six pack has returned. So it's back after its hiatus, and it's still there. I've been able to keep it. So the system has just been able to not only just get my health back, but help me to keep my health. Again, that's just what I want for anyone who's on that is looking for a breakthrough in that area. And so joint pain again dissolved. That was probably my biggest thing. Didn't happen right away. And so it's one thing I want to say for when people are actually working and trying to get their health back. And if you're doing something that has been proven to work, and you're like, okay, it seems to be helping this person, it seems this person, but I've been doing it for a month or two or three. Like, why am I not seeing the results I want to see? Sometimes it's taking you decades to get to where you are. And then now all of a sudden you're wanting, something that's supposed to work instantaneously. Well, this was probably again something that I wasn't expecting to actually feel and experience, but months upon months upon months of taking this doing the system, got all these other benefits, maybe you're a little bit quicker, that joint pain continued to roll away and roll away and roll away to the point where it seems like now over a year later, I still like pain just seems to keep getting better and better and better. So I'm so thankful for that. And again, with that inflammation gone. And so with that, I want to talk about, not just, what we experience, but then from there, it's like, okay, we're in the medical field. We're trying to help people get their health back. Now we experience something that we didn't even think was possible. Let's try to help other people. And so many of the people on the same system that we are actually trying are having such benefits with more chronic conditions like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and especially diabetes. Well, my mom was a 30-year diabetic. So like, hey, we've got to share this with her and make sure that, this isn't just, we're experiencing something, but let's, share this with someone we know and love. And so my mom, after 30 years of dealing with diabetes, got in the system. Only a month and a half later, got her A1C down to 5.1. Those that don't know, pre-diabetes starts at 5.7. And so this pretty much reversed her diabetes again in about a month and a half, really targeting what's really truly behind diabetes and losing weight. Her skin tags are falling off as well that she had developed over the years. A lot of people with diabetes have that. So just an amazing system. And I'm going to talk about a little bit more about, what that entails. But first, I did want to make sure that we talked about the topic at hand. So those that may have gotten, seen the flyer or anything like that from tonight, did want to talk about weight loss or weight gain. It's something that has really been some people are saying that there's an obesity epidemic in place in America. And so we're going to talk about why is weight loss so hard? Why is it so easy to put on the pounds nowadays, but taking them off, doing this, that, and the third just doesn't seem to work for so many people, especially as we're getting older. So with that, we just want to talk about, hold on one second, how common is it for people to actually be dealing with weight gain and obesity? Okay. So we're finding out with the stats, as much of it wasn't a problem decades ago, I should say over 40% of American adults are actually living with obesity. Almost half of the American population is actually dealing with obesity. But the crazy thing is that if we're talking about obesity and being overweight, put those two together, almost 3 out of every 4 adults falls into that category. So that means that almost 75% of the American population of adults is at least overweight, if not obese. That is a crazy, 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 astounding stat when you really sit down and think about it. You can look to your left, look to your life, look to your right, and if you see 4 people, 3 out of 4 of those people are actually going to be either overweight or potentially obese. Matter of fact, even if you look at 1 out of 2 people, there's a good chance that one was going to be obese. That's crazy. And to me, it's not saying that, we have a whole bunch of people in this country that are just lazy, don't care about their health, that they're just going to screw it. I'm just going to do whatever I want to do. I really don't care about, we care about our health. We care about how we feel in our bodies, but yet and still, this is still a stat that's still true, is still present. So something's potentially just not right when you actually think about it in that kind of way. Now, these rates have been climbing sharply in the recent decades, so it wasn't always like this. And for people that have been around for a while, and you can see it. I mean, this just wasn't how it was in previous decades, in the 80s and the 70s. If we're going back that far, some people may not have been alive during these decades, but if we saw it, it's like it looks a lot different now than it used to. And continue to struggle even with their, again, active efforts to lose weight, whatever that may be. Okay, so give me one second. Progress these slides. So our body's survival mechanism. So one of the things that our body actually naturally does is to hold on to energy for a quote unquote rainy day. In other words, for an emergency where maybe we're not getting access to energy being pretty much the food that we're actually being able to eat and break down. And then again, it kind of fuels our bodies to be able to keep doing what they're doing. And so the energy has fat for survival. Now, this isn't supposed to be anything where we need, endless amounts of it, but we do need some. And so it's a natural response to the fact that, hey, scarcity could be a thing that comes up in the future. But the problem arises when we have this fat storage, which is pretty much how the body holds on to energy, really efficiently stores energy, when this process is becoming overactivated. And so this is in essence what's driving weight gain, is when we're holding on to way too body's actually really. And so this really starts and ends with a hormone that is pretty much the most important metabolic hormone in the body, but you could say it's the most important energy storing hormone. And that particular hormone is going to be called insulin. Insulin is a very common hormone that people have known a lot about because they heard a lot about it. Maybe they don't know all the things that it's associated with. Most people know about it when it comes to diabetes and the fact that it helps to bring your blood sugar down. That's great. I just want to break that down. Sugar is a source of energy. And so it helps to bring that sugar into your blood cells. And so again, it's helping you to store energy. That's just pretty much one of the main things that insulin does. Well, it's actually a fat storage hormone because again, it's helping you now to store fat, another source of energy. So this is pretty much what insulin is doing, is helping you to store energy, whether you're talking about sugar or as fat. And so with that, high levels of it can actually then lead to, again, increased fat storage. It just makes sense. That's what's one of the things that it does, is helping you to hold on to fat. Then when you're going to be having high levels of it, then you're potentially going to be having, high amounts of fat storage. Now, with that being said, if we are in a space where potentially, and we're going to talk about why someone would be in this place of where you have high levels of insulin and potential over a chronic period of time, it's going to be very challenging then to actually burn fat. If your body is telling yourself, telling yourself, hey, let's store as much fat as we can, yet you're sitting here trying to get rid of it, especially if it's something that's driving your weight to actually go up and up and up from year to year to year. And so this is going to be contributing, of course, greatly to any of the weight loss strategies and activities that you're actually trying to do. And so we're going to talk about now then this condition or the situation what we call insulin resistance. Now, I'm not sure if anyone's heard of insulin resistance. If you had, go ahead and put it in the chat for if you know anything about insulin resistance. It's a big term. I mean, we're just now finding out, okay, potentially what this insulin is. But, insulin resistance, what is that about? Well, to put it very plainly, it's when the body stops responding to insulin. Kind of put those two terms together. You have insulin, supposed to be doing a job. You have resistance, I'm resisting something. This is when the body is actually resisting the effects of insulin. The insulin is trying to talk to it, but it's not really trying to listen. And again, one of the things that insulin actually does is to help that blood sugar to get into your cells. So pretty much whenever we eat, whenever we break down food, typically gets broken down to sugar, that's going to stimulate the pancreas to actually pump insulin out to help to get that, again, sugar that's in the bloodstream into the cells. Well, as the body stops listening to insulin, mainly because we're pumping out insulin way too frequently to the point receptors is just kind of like, look, I can't listen to you all the time if you're going to be coming at me all the time. If you're going to be eating 5-6 times a day, I just can't keep pulling in more and more and more of the sugar, and it's going to be healthy for us. So I'm actually going to stop listening. Maybe when you come, I'm going to listen about 80% of the time, maybe 70% or 60%. Well, what's happening then is that sugar keeps building up in the system, and that makes your body say, well, if there's up in the system, what am I going to do to fix the problem? I'm going to pump out even more insulin and even more insulin. Now, this is going to be a problem, of course, with the sugar, because again, the sugar's not getting into the bloodstream. That's why this is actually something that's really at the root of diabetes. But again, so it does, it helps you to store energy. And so it's actually going to be something where this increased amount of insulin that keeps getting pumped out is going to actually help us to hold on to more and more and more fat. And so now, again, this is where it becomes even more challenging. This is why you can be in a situation where you're insulin over a long period of time, causing your fat cells to just hold on to fat and hold on to fat. And you get stuck in what I like to call fat storage mode. All right, so constant eating. I talked a second ago, but this is one of the things that really can drive you to get into this place of insulin resistance. Why? Because with every meal, like I mentioned before, we're actually breaking down that food, and that's going to pretty much stimulate that pancreas to keep pumping out insulin. And so if we're eating a meal or even eating a snack, even what we call a healthy snack, that's going to stimulate insulin production, is going to stimulate insulin release. And so this is going to then lead to constant fat storage. So if we're eating all the time, if we're grazing throughout the day, even with smaller meals, that means that insulin is getting pumped out all throughout the day, which means we stay in insulin, we stay in a place where insulin is always going, and we stay in fat storage mode. It's going to be hard to lose any weight if you're pretty much in a place where you're holding on to fat. And so again, these frequent eating patterns frequent eating patterns prevent effective fat burning, no matter how hard you're trying, no matter what you're doing, no matter how much you're in the gym, no matter how small you're going to matter. You're just going to be in a place that's going to be super hard for you to have your body let go of that fat that you've been holding on to. And so achieving and sustaining weight loss becomes possible in this place of insulin resistance when we're constantly pumping out insulin, especially too when we're constantly eating. But it's not just how we eat, it's also something that can be very closely associated with what's happening in our gut. And so I want to talk about how our weight in our gut is actually connected. And so our gut bacteria, they play a crucial role in our metabolism. Now, a lot of people don't know, or maybe they just most people just don't even know. Honestly, they haven't been told that when you're actually eating, you're eating for trillions upon trillions. So no, you're not even having to be pregnant, but there are so many trillions of different bacteria in our gut. And so when we're eating, they actually get the first the first fruits, and then we get the well. And what can happen though is that if we're not actually giving our gut bacteria what they need, especially if it's a diversity of them, if the good ones aren't getting what they need, then the ones that are not so great for us, they actually start building up in numbers, taking up the space that the good bugs are supposed to be taken up. And so this can lead to actually increased cravings. So that's going to make you want to eat more and more and more. We talked about just on the last slide the dangers of eating all day in terms of when it comes to trying to lose weight. But it can also lead to inflammation. So a lot of these bad bugs, they actually are ones that can release what we call endotoxins. Now, that just sounds bad, and it is bad. These endotoxins actually start to damage the lining of the gut. It can lead to a situation we call it leaky gut syndrome. Wing of the gut doesn't really hold in what it's supposed to hold in, and stuff starts to get into the gut, including this endotoxin, into our actual bloodstream. And so this can cause inflammation again, not just in the lining of the gut, but now that endotoxin spreads everywhere throughout the body, causing inflammation there. Well, that then actually then gets to our fat cells, and what it can do is actually further prevent our fat cells from actually releasing fat. So now a problem that started in the gut is causing you to hold on to fat, again, regardless of what you're doing from day to day, no matter how clean you're eating, no matter how much you're working out, because your gut is in now, you can't lose fat because of the activity of this endotoxin on those fat cells. It also prevents the browning of the fat. So that's a process where we actually have a place where white fat cells, which typically store energy, they can actually convert to what we call brown fat cells, which would actually burn energy. Well, that prevents that browning effect from though again that change from white to fat to brown fat cells. And so again, we're going to be staying in a place where we're not burning fat, we're just holding on to it. And it actually increases the prevalence of insulin resistance. So another aspect of this endotoxin that gets released from the gut is that it gets to those insulin receptors. Those are the ones that are supposed to be helping those blood. That's where insulin, and it actually helps to help that sugar to come into the system. Pretty much, insulin acts like the key. The insulin receptors are like the keyhole, and so that is what happens. Helps to open up the door of a cell to help that sugar comes in. So that's how insulin actually works when it comes to regulating your blood sugar. Well, regardless of where it is in the body, if these endotoxins get to that receptor, it actually helps or actually prevents insulin from actually being able to activate those insulin receptors. So again, a problem in our gut now is driving insulin resistance. So it doesn't just have to be how you're eating and what we're eating and how often we're eating. It could be simply that you have poor gut health and now it's spread to the body, causing metabolic issues all around the way. And so it's very important for us to not just focus not necessarily on what insulin is doing, but also on what's going on with our gut. So we really got to make sure that we're really focusing where, and the most important place is not just one, but anywhere that can actually be getting us to a place where, again, we're getting this weight gain, we're getting these cravings, we're getting all these things that are keeping us in fat storage mode and helping our weight to just go up and up and up. But there's also another important hormone that I want to talk about is called leptin. So leptin is a hormone that's actually secreted by fat cells. Our body just speaks in hormones, and so even different types of cells can secrete different hormones. And this one actually plays a key role in hunger, fullness, and energy use. Typically, what leptin does is that it helps our bodies to actually say, "Hey, we've got enough stores." Okay, if you don't have a lot of fat cells, then there's not going to be a lot of leptin being released. You got more fat cells, then more leptin gets released. It actually goes to the brain and typically tells the brain is like, "Hey, we don't really need to be eating super often. We should be okay at this point." Well, what can happen is that if you get it into this insulin resistance place and you're just holding on to more and more fat, you have more and more fat cells and they're releasing more and more insulin, then you actually become leptin resistant. That means that now your body doesn't even tell itself, "Hey, you're good. You don't need to store any more energy. Let's not be so hungry. Let's feel full." It stops listening to those signals. And again, this then further drives us to make and eat all day. And we talked about what that can end up looking like. Now you get more insulin pumped out. Now you become more insulin resistant. Insulin resistance now leads you to have more fat cells. fat cells release more leptin, which makes you more insulin resistant, which makes you want to eat more. And you see where this goes and goes and goes. And so once you get down, start rolling down this hill, it just picks up more and more steam. And again, this is not a direction that we want to go. It's truly downhill when it comes to our health and when it comes to our weight. Okay. And so pretty much I just kind of got there a little quickly, but again, leptin resistance is when the brain stops listening to those that leptin hormone. And again, now we're just feeling hungry all the time. Fullness fades, and again, losing fat again just becomes more and more difficult. Okay. And so again, this is just where, again, talking about how these two come together. Insulin stays high. Again, we're holding on to fat cells, so then leptin climbs. The brain stops getting the clear signals. Inflammation starts increasing as well, again, because of a lot of the endotoxins and things like that that are being released from the fat cells. And again, leptin just stops working. And again, stronger hunger, more cravings for fat, and again, slower weight loss. So many different ways that we're actually finding out now through the data, through the science, that it's not as much about these calories in. You notice I haven't talked anything in calories out. And when we think about it, for so much of our experience, for those of us that are really trying to lose some weight, how well has that really worked for us? To be able to be like, okay, I'm in this calorie deficit all the time. We're probably hungry and miserable all the time, but we're not really seeing the weight and the coming off. We're in the gym all the time, much like my wife, like I talked about before. And so we're getting into the calorie deficit, at least as far as how we're counting it. But is it really doing anything? But at the end of the day, our body doesn't have any calorie receptors, but it surely does have a lot of hormone receptors. And so this is how our bodies actually keep keeping us in a place where we're actually storing all this fat with all of these processes, all these hormones keeping the way they are. And in this case, our body's not responding as they would and should if things were in a better. So when we're in fat storage modes, what are some of the signs that we're there? Obviously, the stubborn belly fat. When we're actually insulin resistant, one of the we can have fat all over the body, maybe the arms and things like that, and on the face, but the belly is truly going to be where our body wants to store that excess fat. But low energy is also something that comes with fat storage, which makes sense. You're not like you have a lot of energy, and so you're just wanting to eat and eat. Really one of the reasons why, when you're talking about that sugar not getting into the cells, that's one of the things that insulin's supposed to be doing. When you become insulin resistant, then again, your cells just don't have energy. So you just feel down. You feel low on energy, and you just want to try to fix that problem, but that's only going to make things worse at that point in time. And then you also have the endless, again, pretty much also going to, okay, well, my body's feeling like it doesn't have enough energy, and also say, hey, the solution is to just eat more. So the endless cravings, and again, we even talked about as well. So again, you're signaling in your body that's supposed to say, hey, I'm full. That gets, and it's like, hey, well, I guess we'll just keep eating till the cows come home. And that's, of course, not going to be helping anything when it comes to us being able to. So how do we actually then support weight loss and fat loss? And in this case, we're going to talk about doing it naturally, because let's all face it, I mean, unless you've been under for the last few years, you know that there's some maybe not so natural ways that you can actually be very well targeted and marketed online, on TV, on social media. We know about them in the GLP-1s. This is your solution. This is where we've gotten to, because people have tried everything and nothing seems to be working. And so now we have something that the body is actually that we're just going to, it's really hit hard and continuously all day long to be able to try to get the weight loss. But there are different ways to go about doing this that won't necessarily require us to pay lots of hundreds of dollars per month and potentially put ourselves in a place where we're having to deal with or be down the barrel of what could be side effects down the road. So one of the biggest things is going to be to stabilize your blood. So when stabilizing our blood sugar, it means that we're maintaining our energy levels and reducing our cravings throughout the day. It really helps to decrease that insulin response that we talked about before. Less insulin goes out, then we're actually becoming what we call insulin sensitive, which is where we started. So we go from being insulin resistant back to being insulin sensitive. And so again, stabilizing your blood sugar, again, reduces those insulin spikes. If we don't drive our blood sugar up so much and so often throughout the day, then insulin doesn't necessarily have to jump and come to the rescue to help bring those blood sugars back down. And so this is then going to minimize fat storage and encourage effective fat burning. Again, if we go from fat storage mode to fat burning mode, and then we talk about the impact of the gut health. If we can actually get more of that diversity of those bacteria, get the good gut bacteria back in the system, and we're decreasing the numbers of those bad bacteria, so they're not releasing all of that toxin into our systems. This is going to enhance metabolism, reduce those cravings, and support the weight loss journey. And so, as far as a simple, effective strategy to, actually get to weight loss, how do we actually move this forward? Again, a couple of different ways, and honestly, I don't even have everything here, but these are some of the three that I find to be the most powerful ones to actually really get that weight loss going. It's really helped me, bless me, my wife, even my mom. I talked about, her being able to reverse her diabetes, but that was with weight loss. Again, this is all something that's all drawn together, and we'll talk about it again. Helps to again decrease the amount of insulin that again helping us become more insulin resistant. The less insulin we have in our system, then the less. So we all have to eat. That has to, that has to happen. But if we can eat in a way that can actually decrease that sugar spike, which is what actually releases insulin, the less that sugar spike goes up, the less insulin that gets pumped out. Then we also look at strategic fasting. So some people might actually call this intermittent fasting. So with the fasting strategy, what we're doing is that we're not necessarily going the whole entire day without eating. That would, a lot of times people do that, and a lot of times maybe for religious reasons, but maybe even for health reasons. But in this case, not necessarily anything that we have to do all day, every day. But if we can actually maybe have less of a time during the day when we're eating and have more of a time when we're not eating, that would be the fasted period. Then that gives our bodies, not only our guts, because they're not having to work so hard, but it also gives our body a break from insulin. If you're not eating, insulin's not coming up. So if we can actually get to a place where the majority of the day, even if it's the vast majority, some people do one meal a day, but even if you're doing two meals a day, instead of having that first one, maybe there's only 8 hours of the day that we're eating and 16 hours that we're not eating, including when you're sleeping. So not so intimidating when you're thinking about when you're actually your pillows on the bed. You're not thinking about food at that point in time. We're leveraging those hours. Then again, that gives our bodies again another break from insulin, another break from the fat storage hormone. And then again, feeding the good gut bacteria helps to get our gut back in balance. We're not having all of this, inflammation in the gut from the bad bacteria running the show. That inflammation and those endotoxins aren't getting into the system, aren't getting to your insulin receptors, and preventing insulin from actually being heard by those insulin receptors that are supposed to be again getting that sugar into the cells. And so again, this really just helps with the process of getting everything. So it's again not going to be a one magic bullet thing that we're doing here. I can even talk about other things in terms of metabolic health, working out, how we should work out, what things to focus on, and things like that. If we're going to have cardio or walking, when you should do that, I could talk about that as well. But these are just three really powerful ways that we can really get started right now. And so once we actually, get your body moving the way that it should, again, it may not happen overnight, even if you're employing these strategies. What's going to actually start happening when, you're actually working with your body and the body starts cooperating with you, you get the fat burning that becomes more effortless. You get into a routine of doing these things, the pounds start to come off. You actually start to actually see that, hey, I'm slimming down. Maybe if you don't see the pounds coming down, but you're like, hey, but I'm still losing inches, what does a number mean if you're actually getting to look in your look in the mirror like you want to look, if you're actually be able to, get into those pair of jeans that you haven't been able to get back into 5 years. That's what we want to be able to get to. We want to have those cravings diminish so we don't feel like we're slaves to like, man, I just always have to have food around. Like I want to be in control of my own body. I want to be able to eat when I tell myself to eat, as opposed to my body telling me, no, you got to go ahead and get something in your mouth. Those cravings start to diminish, energy levels start to soar, so we get back to being able to be more active like we like to be. And again, managing becomes simpler and simpler and simpler. Again, typically when we have all this momentum going downhill, once you start working with your body in a way that it works, you notice that you're starting to get more and more and more benefits. And again, the journey towards health becomes wellness becomes enjoyable and it's sustainable. So many people are doing this here. We're always having these January 1st, New Year's resolutions about our health because whatever we did last year didn't work because whatever happened last year didn't work. And what happened last year, like we want to be able to not only get our health, but get it in a way just like, I could do this for the rest of my life because this works for my body. I'm not killing myself. I'm not paying all kinds of crazy money for stuff that's getting me somewhat results. Maybe it's actually helping with symptoms, but it's not getting to the root. And so this is what we've been able to find, me and my wife. We just want to be able to share with as many as people as possible. And in this case, I also want to talk about a system that really makes a lot of what I talked about in terms of a strategy to get this weight loss going very simple and very science-based. We're in the medical field, and so we're all about looking at the science and what actually works. And so we're going to talk about what me and my wife were able to start to be able to get into good health. And it's called the Feel Great Protocol. I like to call it Feel Great System, but tomatoes, tomatoes. But this system, again, has just been revolutionary for, again, me, my wife, my mom, and so many others in terms of being able to truly get their health back. And when I say their health back, I know we're nowhere. We had a focus tonight about weight gain and how we actually lose weight. But at the end of the day, these topics that I talked about, insulin resistance and also the gut health, they're actually raging a war. And when it comes to the health and the chronic health conditions that are really going on with, especially us here in the West, especially here in America, but now starting to become worldwide. And as you can see here, I have this diagram here that has insulin resistance in the middle, and so many of these little they're little here, if you will, but they're not little in terms of the impact they're having on people's lives. We talked about obesity today, and I talked a lot about diabetes because insulin resistance again is going to be causing your blood sugar to go up. Well, that's pretty much what diabetes is, but insulin resistance is actually at the root of so many other chronic conditions like cancer. That's crazy because cancer is a lethal condition if it's not treated. But yet, the cancer cells love to feast on the sugar that insulin resistance pretty much allows to start building up in the system way more than regular cells do. So pretty much when we have cancer cells actually sticking around, they're going to be loving a situation where a person, an individual, is going to be insulin resistant. Another thing that they're going to love is that if you're in poor gut health and your immune system, which is highly tied to your gut health, 70% of the immune system cells are lining the gut. So we have inflammation all along the intestinal tract. We're going to have some dysfunction with what's going on with the immune cells. Well, immune cells are very critical when it comes to finding a cancer cell and weeding it out before it actually has the opportunity to proliferate. Sorry, got tongue tied there. And so, when we have the poor gut health, when we have the insulin resistance, we just now have set ourselves up to be like, hey, if a cancer cell pops up, it's really going to have its way and it's going to be well fed on top of that. But it's not even just, some of these metabolic conditions like fatty liver disease, even heart disease. There's a 4 times more likelihood of having a stroke or heart attack when you have diabetes, which again is coming from insulin resistance. But we also have sexual issues with our bodies. Polycystic ovarian syndrome, pretty much the thing that's driving that, insulin resistance. Matter of fact, they give a diabetic medication called metformin to help. But on the other side of things, not just for the ladies, also have ED, erectile dysfunction. Insulin resistance really does a number on our testosterone production. So it's really doing a number for us all along. But it's not just the chronic conditions that kind of let us know that we might be dealing with poor gut health and insulin resistance. It can even be things that are a little less benign, if you will. You have the frequent urination at night. We have cravings. We being tired even after we eat. We talked about the belly fat tonight, of course, but high cholesterol, high blood pressure. Again, skin tags. I talked about that with my mom with the diabetes, and a lot of diabetic patients have that. The dark folds around the skin, acne, just poor skin. Again, that's going to be a lot from those toxins being released from the gut. All these different things. Again, I'm only going about maybe halfway down that list are related to poor gut health and insulin resistance. And let's just face it, if you're not on here listening to this thinking like, oh yeah, a lot of that actually seems to be me, then again, you're looking to your left, you're looking to your right, you're looking all around. So many of us are actually dealing with either these chronic conditions, these bigger names, or maybe some of these things that are just kind of, in essence, precursors to the actual diagnosis, which is probably on its way. So, what's actually paving the way for all of this? Well, pretty much is going to be our modern diet dilemma. I talked a lot about what can be driving insulin resistance. And again, we're right back to eating all day, eating every 2 to 3 hours like we're some newborn babies. All right. Our bodies can't seem to resist. And, unfortunately, no one's shoving a bottle down our mouth. Is actually us eating and snacking all throughout the day. And in this case, we're typically not even eating the most healthiest foods. We're actually eating a lot of processed foods where the fiber has been taken out of it. That's something that's really been done pretty much about since the 50s or 60s to bring in the advent of snacks, if you will, food that can actually sit on the shelf with endless shelf life. But that shelf life, when we're eating it, actually decreases ours. Okay, when we're eating it all day now, we're the ones that aren't lasting nearly as long as we used to. And the facts are there for sure. And so this foods, when you actually take the fiber out, what it does is it actually then allows your blood sugar spike after that meal to be a lot significantly higher than it would have been. Fiber actually helps to blunt the amount of sugar or the sugar spike that comes with a particular type of food. The sugar doesn't get into our system nearly as quickly when we have the adequate amounts of fiber. It's good for our bacteria as well in the gut. But in this case, we're talking about, maybe an apple like that, where you take away the fiber, and sure, you have maybe all natural apple juice, but you took all the fiber out, and so that apple juice, no matter how organic and well sourced it is going to drive your sugar up, drive your insulin up, keep you in fat storage mode. Also, the same thing with, you see this wild rice here. You remove the fiber. Now we have the nice white rice that we love. But again, even though we don't think of it as sugar, those are straight carbohydrates. That's what really drives our blood sugar up most than anything else, more than your protein, definitely more than your fat, which almost has no impact on our insulin. And so this is what's going to be driving it. Again, you took away the fiber that would have blunted that blood sugar spike. Now your sugar's through the roof. And so what do we do? I mean, you look at, you go to the grocery store, 75% of the food that you see there is ultra processed. All the fiber's been taken away for it to have that shelf life. You're trying to eat as clean as you can, but you're like, well, I don't have a lot of healthy options here. Like, what do I? Well, we found a system where we actually are able to now put back in our bodies what we actually need to be able to get our health back in a significant way, in a very sustainable way. And so the first thing is that we're bringing that fiber back. All right, we're bringing that fiber back, and it's with a product that we like to call balance. Now, it's called balance because of what it's doing with our gut. So it's doing two things. I think it's two very powerful things. And so one is that fiber, it's actually coming from seven different plant-based sources. Now, in this case, the fiber, we actually need, our guts actually need that. We don't actually even take in fiber into our systems. All right, fiber is 100% for our guts and our guts only. Pretty much goes straight through us. So that being said, a lot of people know that, oh yeah, fiber helps you to get regular. Well, it also helps to potentially feed our good gut bacteria. And what our good gut bacteria, since there's so many different kinds, is that they don't want to just see one type of fiber or two types of fiber or three types of fiber. They want to see a ton of different types of fiber because this bacteria here might like this type of fiber, and this one here might like this type of fiber. This one over here likes this type of fiber. But there's thousands of types of microbes in our gut, and they need all kinds of different types of fiber. So we have seven different types in this one particular product. And so it really helps to feed all kinds of different types of bacteria. And this is what it's going to be helping to, again, with the IBS. Again, my wife, acid reflux, she had her lactose intolerance go away. Why? Because she got her gut health back together. Constipation, of course, we know about that. I just mentioned that. And that's when everyone's, Metamucil, you know how that works. So of course, that's going to help with that. Also helps with the diarrhea. And again, the diarrhea could be coming from the fact that, we have bacteria that's releasing toxins and making our gut go haywire. Again, if we can get good bacteria, get into good gut health, then all that can actually return away. Skin health, again, that endotoxins gets to the body. One of the body's best ways of trying to get rid of it is to actually have it come through our skin. So our skin starts to look, for lack of a better term, jacked up when we actually are in poor gut health. And so that starts to clear up when we're actually getting our gut health back together. And anxiety and depression, again, even some other issues related to mental health. Again, we have what we call the gut brain axis. There's a significant impact of what the gut does that actually impacts how we think, how we feel, how we behave. And so when we get, again, good gut health, again, well, my wife being able to get off of her antidepressant after 10 years, this is some of the impacts that we can have. And so in addition, though, to getting our gut health back together, it's also helping to decrease our blood sugar spikes after a meal. So one of the things that I usually like to tell people that, when you're having a meal, you should start off with FFP. It's either fiber, fat, or protein. Well, in this case, we have fiber now that's, we're just taking right before that meal. And again, that really much helps this product helps to get that fiber into our guts before we get our meal in, making sure that our blood sugar spike isn't going to be nearly as high as it would have been otherwise. Matter of fact, it's actually been studied. So again, a well-studied, all-natural product, not something that we really hear about. Even as a pharmacist, I can tell you there's a lot of stuff we know about, stuff that's cooked up in Big Pharma's lab, but now we actually have natural solutions that are well studied, in this case by reputable institutions like the University of Sydney, where they found that it actually decreases blood sugar spikes after a meal by more than 40%. That's almost half. So if we're decreasing your blood sugar spike by almost half after a meal, what's going to happen with the insulin afterwards? It's not going to have to jump up nearly as much to be able to actually handle that blood sugar spike that comes afterwards. Again, all helping us to become insulin sensitive once again. But it's not just even blood sugar that we're talking about. It actually has a significant impact on our cholesterol. So for people that may be dealing with issues with high cholesterol, the Cleveland Clinic now, if anyone's actually done a little search on Google and you're like, oh, okay, I've got this going on, I got that going on, my mom's got this, what's going on? You're going to see all these articles coming from Cleveland Clinic. Why? They're the #1 heart hospital in the world. Very reputable institution. And they have actually studied the same exact all natural system, all natural product here called Balance. And they found that such a product, if taken regularly, could reduce cardiovascular risk on a population basis and potentially decrease the need and or dose for lipid lowering, in other words, cholesterol lowering prescription medications. Now, I don't care at this point in time if I happen to be out of a job, or at least I'm not, in a place where, as a pharmacist, I'm not dispensing any of these cholesterol lowering medications. If people can get their health back and get it out back with a all natural solution. But this is actually just one half of what we're actually trying to do here with the system, because the other half is where we're actually making fasting easier. So one of those strategies that I talked about before was going to be to actually making sure that we're staying away from food all day long. Well, if you're very used to doing that, stopping that is not going to be necessarily something that's easy. It'll take a lot of willpower. A lot of people do it, but some people struggle, or at least they struggle to do it in a sustainable way. Like, okay, I'm going to do this intermittent fasting thing, but are they doing it a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, despite the benefits that they might have seen early on? It's tough. Well, this makes fasting so much easier because this product called Unamate tea is actually derived from the yerba mate plant, which is found mostly in South America. It helps to take those cravings away as long as you're sipping on it throughout the day. And so what it does is that it's actually helping to boost our body's own GLP-1. I talked about that one later. But again, our body's own. So this is natural GLP-1 that actually helps us to decrease our cravings. Again, it's because that's one of the main things that GLP-1 does. If you talk to anyone who's actually been on GLP-1s, that's the main thing. I don't feel like eating. I don't feel like eating. This actually then helps to do that throughout the day, but in this case, on demand. We're not, keeping GLP-1 on the receptors all day long. We're actually only using it when we need to, and it's going to be boosting our body's GLP-1 by over 60%. That is an amazing thing to be able to do. But it's not just doing that; it's also helping with our feelings of, alertness, giving us energy. Like I said, one of the parts of the system really helped me right away was the brain fog. This is what was doing it. It was really helping me to be a lot more efficient at work. And again, it's helping with weight loss, as it mentions there, because again, if we can actually fast significantly, we're staying away from insulin and we're not eating all day, then insulin stays at bay. And then we're actually able to get into fat burning mode instead of fat storing mode. And it's going to help us to actually produce more of the ketones. That's what happens when you break down that fat instead of having to use the sugar. And ketones, our body seems to actually work better with ketones, especially our brains. Again, this is probably why my brain fog was being lifted as opposed to always having to have a snack, always having to have sugar and things like that. And so, again, we put these two together, and what do we call it? We call it the Feel Great system. We call it the Feel Great protocol, and it's really been a solution for so many people in their health. Not just me, but so many others. We'll talk about them in a second. But again, well studied, even to the point where it has 5 patents on it. So many reputable institutions here: Cleveland Clinic, BYU. We talked about that's University of Sydney, UNLV, Stanford. Again, just being able to have so many clinical studies to actually hang our hat on that this stuff works. It works amazingly, and again, with an all-natural solution. Safe, you can actually use it in women who are pregnant, women who are breastfeeding, even in children. We've helped one of our kids' uh, friends. This is for my daughter. She's going into 5th grade now, but when she was in 3rd grade, we were helping one of her classmates who was actually getting weight on. We talked to her mom, got her on the system. She's doing great on the system. This is, again, a very safe system, again, all natural. And it's actually cost neutral. We'll talk about that in a second. But it's also in more than 50 countries. At this point in time, I think it says more than 60 countries. And so really trying to get out there and help as many people across the globe that may be struggling with these different conditions, again, the gut health and insulin resistance. And so, again, we have the Balance, we have the Unamate tea, just these 2 products. And pretty much we'll talk about how your daily system flows. But I did want to talk about that whole cost neutral thing. You're like, well, what does that mean? So pretty much when we're talking about having to intermittent fast, what we're typically doing is going to be cutting out snacks. You're going to be cutting out a whole entire meal. For most people, that's be cutting out breakfast, and then you eat lunch and dinner. For some people, they may really love breakfast, so maybe they do breakfast and lunch, and then they cut out dinner. However you do it, but typically you want to get 2 consecutive meals in, and then drop the third one. And so when we're dropping that meal, that means we're dropping the price of having to pay for it. So in 26 dollars, if we're talking about a whole entire meal, you're saving about $5 to $10 on that particular meal. Nonetheless, potentially any snacks that may be coming before you actually get to lunch. So for us, me and my wife, we actually became cost positive on this system. But typically, again, since this system costs $159 a month, you break that down to about 30 days a month. That's about $5 a day. That means that, again, for the most part, we're probably at least becoming cost neutral if we're doing this the way that it's supposed to be done. Again, we're not really necessarily doing it. I mean, I think if you're getting something of value, yeah, you should pay for it, but we're not doing it to save money. We're doing it to save our lives or to get our lives back. But in this case, it's an amazing thing that you can actually do that at a price point where if we're doing it in the way that we're supposed to be getting the results that we want to see, that we're actually not necessarily breaking our bank. Think about it in terms of it being part of your grocery bill. So, if I'm now paying for this, but now I'm not having to pay for as much food as I was before, then again, it's not like it's this added expense. Is that just becomes a different part of the grocery bill than we had before. Now, as far as how the protocol works, uh, this is generally how most people do it, is how I do it as well. We start off the day drinking the tea. So here's my tea right here. I'm actually sipping on it now. So it's not just for the necessarily the beginning of the day, but we go ahead and start that day. You've been fasting all night long. You haven't been eating unless you do some weird sleepwalking, sleep eating stuff. But if you're not doing that, like most people, then you've been fasting all night long. Well, for most people, we like, hey, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. I got to have it first thing in the morning. No, you don't. Well, you're like, well, I'm hungry. Well, that's what the Unimate is there for. It helps you to kill those cravings right off the bat. So instead of reaching for that box of cereal, you're reaching for your bottle of Unimate to drink throughout the morning. That really keeps that fat burning going because again, instead of eating and then getting that insulin triggered, nope, you just keep yourself in fat burning mode until we finally get to lunch. You get to lunch, and then that's where we take advantage of the balance. So the balance again is where we actually decreasing that blood sugar spike. Take that right before that meal, and then that actually again allows that meal to not trigger nearly as much of an insulin response as it would have. Again, we're not trying to get in fat storage mode any more than we need to. Well, now we started, what we call our feeding window with intermittent fasting. So technically, you can kind of eat throughout that window. Again, say if you're eating for 8 hours and you started at 12, then eat till 8. But do we have to eat all throughout that way? Again, if we're eating all throughout that time, then insulin's going to be triggered all throughout that time. Well, now you can actually now eat and then get back to the Unimate tea. So that helps to kill those cravings so that we're not, again, eating and eating and eating, spiking insulin over and over again. You can actually do something with those cravings to, again, start getting back to fat burning mode again. But of course, we got dinner coming around the corner. So with dinner, we go ahead and get a balance before that as well, decreasing that blood sugar spike. And then now, depending on when you eat, we have time where you might be awake, but if that's the case, you can get back to the Unimate again. Matter of fact, for those that may be caffeine sensitive, there's actually even decaffeinated options that can actually help to again keep those cravings low even at night without keeping you up all night. So that's the end of your day. You go to sleep, and then what we do, we run it all back again. Get back to the Unimate, take the balance for the meals, use the Unimate to stay away from snacks, and we just wash, rinse, repeat. Super sustainable, getting our gut health back together and helping us become insulin sensitive again. Again, getting those insulin levels down so that we can lose the weight. We can potentially reverse diabetes. We can potentially, bring blood sugars down. And we'll talk about some of the testimonials here where we have individuals going from an A1C of 13.8, clearly diabetic, but down to 5.9 and losing 90 pounds. Even again, getting those gout. Again, I didn't mention anything about gout, but again, these are some of the common issues that are related to again, poor gut health and insulin resistance outside of maybe more common ones. I always have Delana here, who's her focus was a little bit more on the cholesterol, lowering cholesterol by 76 points, triglycerides down by 120 points, blood pressure, again, something that's related to insulin resistance as well, and no longer having sleep apnea off of medications. We're losing 50 pounds. A1C is going from 7.9 to 5.4, losing all these inches with the XL of the 4XL shirt going down to just XL. Neuropathy, that's going to be that nerve pain, also related to insulin resistance and poor gut health, blood pressure, cholesterol lowering, and lastly, we have a young lady who has lost 63 pounds, no longer pre-diabetic. Inflammation is gone. Again, I definitely attest to that. Joint pain gone. I can attest to that. Vertigo gone. Again, other things that we're just not necessarily seeing. We're just like, where's the solution for this? Again, this is about getting your hormones and everything back in the track that they need to be. Skin clearing up, sleeping clearly, deeply at night. Just an amazing system. So again, we can go on and on and on with the testimonies. You can see my wife here. You can see me in the corner here, but you have my sister-in-law here. She has MS. That's going to be an autoimmune condition. Again, that's a lot of things, a lot of times related to poor gut health. Again, your immune system is typically in disarray when we have poor gut health. She's had so much benefit from that. We have Jackie Lecky up here who has lost over 100 pounds on the system. So just so much benefit. And I just wanted to make sure that, I'm coming on as much as I can to share this system with so many people who might be in a place where they're struggling with their health. They've been struggling for a time, but you're still stuck in your body. You still got to do something about it, but you just don't know what to do. You're at your wits end. You don't know what it is that you can do. The calorie deficit isn't helping. The exercising isn't helping. Matter of fact, it might get to the point where exercise becomes challenging because of the excess weight that you have, maybe the inflammation that we're having in our joints, we're having the arthritis, and everything that you're supposed to do becomes even more difficult. It's hard to eat right when you have the cravings all day. It's like you only have but so much willpower. How do we make this thing work? How do we return this thing around? I might be in that three out of four of the population that is obese and overweight, but it doesn't mean I'm not trying. It doesn't mean I'm not doing the work, if you will, but you're just using the wrong playbook. And so this actually gives you the play that you need to be able to succeed. This actually gives you, again, a very simple, very sustainable way of getting to the root of what's actually wrong. And at the very least, for people who have been struggling for a long, I know you've tried so many different. I know you tried this fad diet and that fad diet and the ketone and the Atkins and all these other different things. But again, maybe you had some success here, but here we are again, like, well, today, as of today, where's my breakthrough? As of today, where's my health? And what can I do? Like, I don't want to just lose a couple pounds here, have them bounce back. Like, I want to have my health. I want to hold on to it. I want to maintain it. And I think that is a God-given right for anyone who came to this world in good health to be able to walk out of it with that same health. And so that's what I want for anyone who's on this call. I want you to be blessed with health that is of substance that is, again, obtainable and sustainable. Okay. And so if that is the case, if that's who you are, let me actually stop the share. I just want to make sure that I'm letting you know that, it is available. At least there is something that you can try. You may still be in that place where you're like, you know what, 159, I don't know if I'm willing to invest in my health quite that yet. Hey, I get it. Maybe we haven't exhausted all the resources, but if you are at that place where it's kind of like, I think I've done enough. I haven't heard anything quite like this. I haven't seen testimonies quite like this for something that's all natural, something that is actually reversing not just this one issue, but so many different issues. And again, it's because, the way that we're eating, what we're doing to our bodies without even knowing it. We're just kind of living. We're eating the food that's out there. We're eating the way that seems like everybody else is eating, but it's, at the end of the day, really killing our health. What can I do to, make it simple to actually get my health back? You know, Tonight, if this is you, if it's someone that actually invited you to come onto this call, just make sure that you reach out to them and be like, hey, I think I'm a little interested to learn a little bit more about this field rate system. What is that about? As far as anyone that I may have invited on, or even just wanting to learn more about it, I did want to share the name of my site in terms of where you can actually find more information. So it's going to be resetwellness.info/system. So let me put that in the chat. And so that's where you can actually go to find more about the system. And again, if someone else invited you, hey, just make sure you talk to them. Make sure that you have that discussion with them, and I'm sure they'll be able to help you to find more information about the system as well. But for anyone else who's also maybe just wanting to learn more about metabolic health, again, maybe you're in that DIY place and you're just kind of like, you know what, I think I still want to do some more research. I've heard about other strategies, other things that are out there that can help. I would love to be able to just keep giving you information that may help you on your wellness journey. And so I do have a email list that I recently started. And so if you want to potentially just be able to get information about once or twice a week, where you're actually just learning information about, some of the things and strategies that can help with getting your health back together. I also have a get you to where you can get on that. It's called the Wellness Reset. And so with that, if you were to sign up, I also have a metabolic reset blueprint. And so it pretty much is one document that can actually kind of show you a few different ways, more than a few, where you can actually start working on it again. And if you're in that DIY place, to be able to help get your health back together as you're again on that journey. I'm just here to, be a resource, a blessing to anyone that, hopefully is in the need of a lesson. So that's pretty much all that I have for you guys on tonight. I pray that helpful and informative and something something that you can actually take and sense of the situation. If you're on your weight loss journey, and it's been a rough one, it's been a long one. Hopefully, what you learn here can start triggering some good steps to take, some actions to take, some understanding to be like, oh, that's okay. I've been doing this for a long time. Now I understand why that's not helping. I've been doing that for a long time, and when we start, getting that knowledge of with how the body truly works, that's when you actually start to get true transformation. So, with that, guys, blessings, and thank you guys for your time.